President Biden has invoked the Defense Production Act and announced Operation Fly Formula to address baby formula shortage. President Joe Biden has invoked the act to address the nationwide shortage of baby formula he announced on Wednesday. It's getting bad out there, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just the baby formula stuff. It's also gas prices. We have another story, this one from a couple days ago from Post Millennial. Washington gas stations run out of gas. Add extra digit in anticipation of $10 gas prices. Yo, I hope you are all paying attention. Now, Joe Biden invoking the Defense Production Act, I say, okay, good, I guess. We want to produce more baby formula, get it back on those shelves and make sure that people are able to get it for their babies. Otherwise, I'm telling you, man, we are in dangerous territory. We also had this other story. They tried passing this bill. And it was called like the Helping Babies Bill or something. I'm exaggerating, but something like that. And a bunch of Republicans voted no on it. And I think they voted no for an obvious reason. It was a bill to expand government power to supersede state requirements in terms of production if the federal government determines there's an emergency. Now, of course, the media is saying these heartless Republicans don't want babies to eat. Yeah, no, that's not it. The bill just grants more power to the federal government. Thomas Massey had a tweet. I don't know if it was about this one, but he said, if we just voted based on the names of the bill, I'd vote for them a whole lot more often. Let me explain one thing. Why I will say, good job, Joe Biden, invoking the Defense Production Act. Maybe there are things that we could have done better to make sure baby formula didn't run out. Maybe it's Joe Biden's fault in the first place. Maybe it's the Democrats, whatever. You know, if they dug us a hole and fell into it, and now they're like, don't worry, I'll get us out. I'm like, correct the mistake you've made. But at least for now, I can say probably a good move. We see revolutions. We see civil wars when people can't get access to food. But it's not just about what people, the individual, can't get access to. It's when they can't feed their kids. Rest assured, and most of you probably know it because I assume many of you have children. What would you be willing to do to make sure your child ate? Would you just sit and watch as your child starved? No, I'd imagine you would not. And if it gets to the point where there's no formula, people will probably try, warm milk or goat's milk, or they'll try and make their own formula or things like that. Now, I've heard that I don't know what you should feed a baby. I've heard people say you shouldn't give them cow's milk or goat's milk or anything like that. Back in the day, we had wet nurses. And there are probably a lot of women who overproduce in terms of breast milk. They sell it or they distribute it or they donate it. But we got a lot of people and we got a lot of babies. And if people can't feed those babies, they are going to do whatever it takes to get food, to get formula for those kids. When people can't feed themselves, they get agitated, they get angry, they get stressed out. When people can't feed their babies, we are in revolutionary territory. You know that many on the left are eager and excited for some kind of revolution. But when we are talking about people can't feed their kids, this is the precipice of complete instability. People who can't feed their kids, the people will risk their lives. People will risk prison. People will sacrifice you for their kids. I'm telling you, man, war exists for a reason. The story from timcast.com says the shortage came amid a supply chain crisis and temporary closure of Abbott Laboratories facility in Sturgis, Michigan, where Similac products are produced. Biden announced the efforts in a tweet saying, I'm taking 2 steps to increase baby formula supply, invoking the Defense Production Act to increase domestic production, launching Operation Fly Formula to use federal planes to fly formula in from abroad. We're making sure safe formula gets to all who need it. I can only say, good job. Good job. I am not going to sit here and just rag on the president for any other issues. I'm going to say thank you for taking some action right now. I'm sure the last thing a parent who is stressed about their baby wants to worry about is, was it Joe Biden's economic policies? Is it shutting down fuel? Whatever. Okay, fine. All of those things. I'm not going to say you should vote for the man. I'm not going to say we should be supporting Democrats. I'm going to say in this instance, right now, please get formula to parents. Credit for that. That's it. Now, I can go on and talk about everything else. We can talk about how bad things are starting to get and how we are entering, come on, guys, civil war, revolutionary territory, call it whatever you want, instability, destabilization of this country. Fine. The reason I would say civil war is because you have 2 large factions that are at each other's throats, figuratively. And when you add into the mix If it was just gas prices and food shortages, I'd say instability and revolution. But when you have two worldviews clashing, multicultural democracy, constitutional republic, credit to Stephen Marsh for that one, the writer of the book, The Next Civil War, I think we are dangerously close to, take a look at this from the Post-Millennial a couple days ago. Washington gas stations run out of gas, add extra digit in anticipation of $10 prices. When the gas gets to $10, that doesn't mean, oh no, I won't be able to drive my car. That means there's not going to be food at the grocery store. Post-Millennial says a spokesperson at 76 confirmed to the Post-Millennial that the gas pumps were reprogrammed to allocate for double-digit pricing. Yo, this is going to get lit. Gas stations across the U.S. are running out of fuel. And in anticipation of an increase in gas prices, gas stations in the state of Washington are reportedly reprogramming pumps to include double-digit numbers in price per gallon, as the current trend could put prices over $10. I'm not doing a promo, but I just want to mention, okay, I do the promos for safeandreadymeals.com periodically. I'm not pulling it up. It's weird because I mention it, but I'm just highlighting the people who have prepared for this. Good on you. The people who bought baby formula in advance. Smart. I talked about this a year ago. And so I will say, as much as I can give Biden credit for some of these things, because we just want people to get food, just get it done. How is it that a year after, dude on internet says, hey, look, there's going to be food shortages coming. They're now like, oh, about that. I saw a really funny meme. Jen Psaki, before she left, she was like, no one could have predicted this inflation. And this guy was like, yo, the guy who drains the porta potties at my work predicted this. We've all predicted it. So I suppose as long as you're someone who's been paying attention, you've taken preparation. You've picked up emergency food, water. You've prepared for whatever this means. At the 76 gas station in Auburn, Washington, located at 1725 Auburn Way North, gas pumps have been reprogrammed to make room for double-digit pricing. In March, they still had single-digit programming. Look at this. There's a zero in front of the five. It says 0509. Yo, we're going to get $10 a gallon gas. This is going to be brutal. The economy is going to implode. Done. I don't care if you're rich or poor or whatever. You are going to feel the sting. Now, fortunately, those of us who have electric cars don't have to worry too much about it. I made the joke. I love this. Going on, we like to hear these environmental activists, or I should say the leftists, say things like, if you can't tip, you shouldn't go out to eat. And men should have thought about contraception before getting the woman pregnant, stuff like that. And I'm like, I posted on a Facebook comment about gas prices. I said, if you can't afford an electric car, then you can't afford to drive. And all of these like poor working class leftists are just like, I can't afford an electric car. And I said, then you can't afford to drive. I was like, you don't get to destroy the planet with carbon emissions, pumping out gas and supporting Exxon and oil spills, and then say, oh, but I'm allowed. And then they were like, electric cars are too expensive. I said, a Tesla only costs $60,000. You get the joke. I know they can't afford that, but it's just mind-numbing to me that you have people who make $30,000 or so a year being like, we need to shut down gas pumps and end oil leases, and then gas skyrockets. I'm like, it's not fair. Why is gas so expensive? And then I'm just like, dude, you don't get to argue for shutting down Keystone, for shutting down oil leases, for shutting down oil leases in the Gulf, saying it's better for the environment. And then when you can't drive anywhere and your food skyrockets in cost and there's no baby formula, be like, why is this happening? I went off yesterday on the members only segment at Timcast IRL. I feel bad. I was swearing. I was very condescending. It was rude. And I apologized. And I was like, I got triggered on this war question. Because, we were talking with a group, big crew. We had Libby, we had Alad Eliyahu, and Alad's great. I just got so triggered on the war stuff. We were talking about war. But what really frustrates me, what really grinds my gears, are the people who are so sure, just they know what should be done to solve our problems when they literally have no idea what they're talking about. I don't take strong moral positions on a lot of issues because I don't know enough. So I often say like, man, the abortion question is so tough. I just don't have the answers. I really, really don't. And so I try to refrain from being involved in the direct conflict because I don't want to contribute to destruction or problems for people. I mean, I have my opinions on certain things, but they're very tepid half the time, like very moderate, because I'm like, I don't have all the information. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. So when I hear people talk about, here's what we must do, and then I say, okay, that's interesting. How do you think that would, when they say things like, we got to shut down these oil pipelines, and I'm like, okay, how do you think that would affect gas prices? What do you mean? How do you think shutting down the gas pipelines, the oil pipelines, how do you think that'll affect inflation, food, gas? It won't. It'll just stop the spills. And I'm like, dude, they ship oil on tankers and through freight. There are still oil spills. There's more. Shutting down the pipeline isn't changing any of that. It's just making it more expensive and making it more expensive for you. But the petroleum companies have record profits. Yeah, that's true. But you're talking about record profits that if you were to break down and distribute across all of the gas pumps to lower the cost, it would be lowering it by a few cents. Probably a good thing, I guess. But then, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and defend gas companies with record profits. But how much are we really going to save if you distribute like $5 billion across, hundreds of thousands of gas pumps? Are we going to see the price go down by like 2 cents? I suppose it's better than nothing. So I'm not interested in seeing these big gas companies get billions of dollars, but you're not really answering the question of how we alleviate these problems because that's not going to change much. People don't have answers. When they say things like, we should move over to electric cars. If everyone got an electric car, I'm like, how are you going to generate the electricity for those electric cars? Oh, you mean it's natural gas that we use to spin those turbines to then generate the electricity for our Teslas? It's just insane, man. Greta Thunberg is like, how dare you? I don't want to see the stopping of fossil fuels in 2030 or by 2022. We want it now. She actually said that a couple of years ago. Do you know what would happen to the planet if we shut down fossil fuels just right now? I think within, a week, 60 million dead. I'm not exaggerating. First, all the diabetics die because they need refrigeration for insulin. Then you're going to see food prices just through the roof. Yeah, I think we as humans are addicted to fossil fuels because we've been built into this system. We've created humans and life and civilization with this access, but there are alternatives. It's called nuclear power. And I believe nuclear power has a higher energy return on energy invested than oil with no carbon emissions. You just make it, you sit it there and boom, there you go. Energy coming out for days. It's brilliant, actually. And then we've got to develop technologies and advance this. Plus, I would say let's heavily invest in fusion research. I believe we've hit an ignition with fusion. We've got to the point where we can create, fusion is created. Now we're trying to figure out how to tap that energy source. Right now, we need more energy in than we're getting out. That's not functional. We can't do that. Once we get to the point where we get more energy out than in, then you're getting energy generation, which is a good thing. The real issue is like, I think it's simple. Like fusion has created a vibration, and now we need to extract the energy from the vibration or something, and then we're good. I'm not an energy expert. You guys can probably comment and explain better. But let me just go back to that thought. When you have people who are sitting there and they're like, I think we should do this policy, and you're like, what will that policy do? And they're like, I don't know. It will make less carbon. It's like, okay. And then when you can't eat, what? I don't understand why it is that conservatives tend to be the ones who have asked these questions, even deep moral and philosophical questions. So, for instance, it was, I believe, Jeremy Boring who said, outside of the human experience, nothing matters. And he's completely correct. It's a philosophical question. People don't understand that because they don't seem to realize they live in a human experience. What that means is, if all the humans are dead, will any of this matter? No, because you won't be around to question or exist. Sure, there may be more trees, maybe not. We don't know. The point is, everything we want and desire is rooted in the human experience. And we mostly care about how it affects other humans. Now, some people are concerned about animals, but there will be no concern for animals if there are no humans. You get the point. It's still all rooted in a human perspective and human experience. I believe that we must be good stewards of this earth. I believe we better start cleaning things up. I believe we better start fixing a lot of these problems. You betcha. But I also agree with the conservative view on the human experience. This idea that we're going to be like, the dolphin experience matters to us. No, it doesn't. But we certainly, in my opinion, should not be polluting and destroying the earth and causing extinction events. We need, for one, to be good stewards of the earth, but mostly because it sustains us, because humans don't exist without the ecosystem, the environment, and, the cycles of life. But I feel like many on the left are just, they don't know what they're voting for. They don't care. And they're going to burn the whole thing down. I suppose the only thing you can really say is like, knowing what they do and how they do it, knowing that they lack information and basic understanding of more complex concepts, and at the very least are willing to follow people who are evil, lying, or otherwise, start preparing to protect yourself. Do what you have to do to make sure that you will survive the potential catastrophes that come our way. I had a great conversation with a progressive on Monday. I keep referencing it this past week because he didn't understand philosophical or hypothetical. He didn't know there's a difference. He said, you keep bringing up these philosophical conversations. I don't believe in hypotheticals. And I'm like, that's two different things. But they don't understand this. I'm sure not everybody does. And I'm sure there's a serious challenge. And maybe if I just produced third grade reading level content, I might have a much bigger audience. We were talking about deontology versus utilitarianism. And I'm not going to pretend to be a philosophical philosopher or a master or anything. No, I've just read the basic concepts to explain simple ideas. Deontology being the idea that immoral acts cannot be taken, even if it's against one person for any reason. And utilitarian is the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. That is to say, maximizing good justifies the doing harm to others. Like the trolley problem. I can pull a lever that will kill a person if it saves 5. Most people take the deontological approach, which is I will not take an action to kill that one person, even if it means 5 people die because you killed that person. But if someone doesn't understand moral and ethical philosophy, how do we survive this? When they're like, we should have the government give everyone free money. And you're like, it doesn't work that way. That is not how the machine runs. And they're like, I don't care. And then they pour sand into the gas tank. And you're like, no. And then the car just breaks. It's like, why did you put sand in the gas tank? I don't know. It's like somebody sees someone pouring a clear liquid into the gas tank and they're like, that must be water. And then you're like, no, it's not water, it's gasoline. And they're like, I think it's water. And you're like, no, it's gasoline. And they're like, I vote we pour water in the gas tank and then we can drive. And then they pour water in and the car breaks down. And you're like, why are these people doing this? Why won't they listen? Why are they so arrogant? Why the hubris? You know what I would do? You want to know what I would do? If I saw someone pouring a liquid into the car, I'd say, what are you pouring in the car? And they'd say, it's gasoline. I would say, whatever you say, boss. Far be it from me to assert I know something I have no experience in. Now, don't get me wrong. I probably do that on many occasions. Duh. I just try not to. I'm willing to defer. I'm willing to say things like, you know what? I don't know enough about guns. And so when I went and got educated on guns, I was like, wow, my position's changed. I am now staunchly pro 2A. The moment I went out and started asking questions, I said, hey, all those arguments from the left don't make sense. I bring you now to this is it. Here are the 9 Republicans who voted against a bill to help poor families buy baby formula amid the ongoing shortage. Lie. They're lying. That's not what the bill did. The bill would not make it easier for families to buy formula. The bill allowed the federal government to come in. Look at this. The Congress.gov doesn't even have the text, but I pulled it up from GovTrack. The bill gives the Secretary of Agriculture the ability to supersede state qualified administrative requirements if there's an emergency. That will not give anybody baby formula right now. It's so dumb. HR 7791. Okay. They go on to say, many Republicans crossed party lines to vote for HR 7791, the Access to Baby Formula Act. It's like, we've proposed a bill that will expand the government's powers to supersede the state's requirements for the production of goods. And then you're like, how will that get baby formula to kids? It won't. And then the media is like, these Republicans don't want babies to eat. Thomas Massey, big fan. He said, if we just voted based on the names of bills, I'd vote for almost all of them. Hear, hear, good sir. Someone pointed out, bill to condemn anti-Semitism has passed 422-1. Massey was the lone no vote. Yeah, well, I trust Thomas Massey. There was during the pandemic, I actually criticized him. I absolutely did, because I believe the issue was he was voting against the emergency funding bill in the face of the pandemic. And now, on hindsight, I realize how wrong I was. Massey was right. For one, we should not have shut everything down. Boy, in hindsight, were we all wrong. But I thought in good faith, it would be 15 days. You see the problem? You see the problem with people asserting things when they don't know? I can fully recognize that. I try. I'm not perfect, okay? So, I will say to a certain degree, I believe it's fair for me to criticize, though, those who would push for things when they don't fully understand them. But I suppose it's basically everybody. It's just frustrating when there's a huge gap. I understand that everybody knows everything. I understand maybe even Thomas Massey is wrong and I get things wrong. That's not what I mean to say. What I mean to say is when someone's like, I have no idea what a gas pipeline is. And I'm like, then why did you vote to shut it down? It's more fair if someone says, I understand how gas pipelines work. I understand the economic principles. Here's my thought process. And then someone else can come in and say, here's the information you're missing. And they go, in good faith, with good faith research, I tried to make a decision. When you see these stories, I suppose it's a degree to which you are lacking knowledge. I suppose what I should really say is I respect your efforts so long as you completed your due diligence to understand. Like you tried to understand. I always try to understand. Sometimes I get things wrong. There are many people who don't try to understand, who just say, do it. The Business Insider saying 9 Republicans voted against a bill to help poor families buy baby formula. Just shut up. That is not what the bill says. They didn't do any of their due diligence to understand what they're talking about. That's the issue I take with this all day, every day. The bill, quite simply, it says, notwithstanding any other provision or law during an emergency, the Secretary may modify or waive any qualified administrative requirement for one or more state agencies if the qualified administrative state requirement cannot be met by state agencies during any portion of the emergency period, blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe it's not a bad bill. I don't know. I'm just saying the issue is not we must get food to babies. The issue is the federal government should be able to supersede state requirements. Okay, maybe that's a good bill. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not issuing a moral statement on it. I'm just saying the media is lying because they don't Google search these things. They don't give you an honest analysis. The way they framed it, this should be an op-ed. But you know what? I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm not the smartest person ever. I get things wrong. I'm just recognizing too many people assert things without knowing anything or at least trying. I do it. I get things wrong again. But my point is, try your best. Admit when you're wrong. I'll do it. I try my best to understand these things. When people present me with information, I'll admit I was wrong. Seamus, shout out to Freedom Tunes, because he told me like a month ago that abortion was the intentional killing of the baby. And I said, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about instances where the pregnancy has to be terminated. And he said I was wrong. Upon looking at actual federal law and state law, yes. It is maybe his definition was a bit more on the extreme end, but he's more right than I was. And that is to say, I realized that by looking up the definition, how the CDC tracks abortion, it is action taken to terminate a pregnancy that does not result in a live birth. It's like, oh, okay. And that could mean in some instances that I was right. But for the most part, if you are talking about terminating a pregnancy, post-viability, you are typically saying you take action that ends the life of the baby. And I went, oh. So I would put it this way. There are some instances where I probably would have been right. But for the most part, when we're talking about the bills in question, they're actually talking about action taken to end the life of the baby. So I'll admit, I think Seamus was closer to correct on that one. And it's because there's a legal argument in what this really means. But I believe, I believe Seamus was actually more correct. But anyway, I digress. Here we are with the ramifications from these individuals who don't read. All right. I suppose things will get worse. I think things are getting better in a lot of ways. Don't get me wrong. Free speech, for instance, maybe things will turn around. Go vote in your primaries. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out. We won't be doing any shows tomorrow because I have an important business meeting. I have to fly out. So tomorrow is a day off, but for the rest of the day, we'll operate as normal. We'll see you all at 1 p.m. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for hanging out.